Hey YouTube, I purchased this Seadoo RXTX 300 in March of 2019. I got 3 full seasons on it, roughly about 35 hours of runtime over the course of those 3 seasons, and wanted to give you my thoughts on it. 1630cc engine, 300 horsepower, supercharged with closed loop cooling. That's absolutely incredible. This machine just pops right out of the water. You go full trim up, sport mode, hammer down, it's impossible not to pop a wheelie. You can quite easily get the whole watercraft out of the water, even if it's glass, you know, the lake's glass, you can still pop the whole thing out. Engine's absolutely incredible. There's some really pretty nice accessories with this machine that drew me in. So for example, the glove box with a cell phone holder works really great. Wish it was a little bit bigger to fit 2 phones, because it's typically me and my wife riding this machine together. So it's nice I can put my phone in there, but then hers usually just kind of sits on top here and we close it up, and it's still fine, but I just wish it was a little bit nicer. The display has this, I think it's a 7.2 inch screen, really easy to read. I like it better than the analog gauges of the past, just because the speedometer is a nice big clear number. Controls there on the left, you got the trim, your sport mode, eco mode, cruise control, and the right you can use that right touchpad here to change around the layout of the screen. Never really found a benefit to doing that. The mirrors are advertised as wide angle rear view mirrors. A really cool thing about that is in some states you can legally tow a water skier, wakeboarder, or tuber without a spotter because of those wide angle rear view mirrors. There's the learner key, the regular key. I never use the learner key. I didn't find an advantage to that. There's an optional USB cell phone charger you can mount inside that glove box. I don't have that. Again, I didn't find an advantage to that. There's the link system on the back, which is basically these guys pop up, and you can put accessories like a cooler or a ski pylon could go in this one. I never bought any accessories because the front storage compartment is big enough to fit a medium-sized cooler and everything else I need. This front storage compartment is a little unique that it lifts the handlebars and everything up all in one shot. Quite large. This extra bin over here, organizer net, it was only, I think, like $40 through Seadoo. I would definitely recommend that. You can fit some towels, sunscreen, whatever else without it bouncing around in there. Front storage is kind of hard to access when you're floating in the water. Say you're swimming in deep water and you want to grab a beverage from the cooler. It's impossible to reach from the water into here. It's just the way it sits high in the water and the height of that overallness. You got to climb on the machine to be able to reach in there to get anything. So that's definitely kind of negative. And these latches, the open and close this compartment, take quite a bit of force to pull. There's one on each side. I don't really like that. If you know how to loosen those up, or if you grease them, or you got any suggestions, leave that in the comments for me. I would appreciate it. The screen is backlit. Not that you would ride this machine at night, but it is. It's easy to read. It has your trim and your fuel, speed, RPM, temperatures, direction, heading, really anything I could imagine I would really need. Where I use this, I don't need GPS or any of that, so it works out pretty well. I didn't mention I had the safety kit in there underneath the front storage, as well as the fire extinguisher. Kind of a neat little spot they plug in. It's molded in. This machine is 828 pounds dry, which is a lot, but it's not that ridiculous. It has a capacity or a weight rating of 3 passengers or 600 pounds, which in turn means this is a very stable jet ski compared to this old 2001 Kawasaki Ultra 150 that has a weight capacity of 330 pounds. If you got 2 people on this old Kawasaki, it is incredibly tipsy. If you have 2 people on this 2019 Seadoo, it's very stable. So a lot of people like the stability. It's more friendly for beginners. That stability does not translate into being less playful. I will say that. With the amount of horsepower this machine has, you can carve it in some pretty good donuts and figure eights and pop wheelies with the extended trim nozzle. That I would say these two machines they're quite different animals. Where this is a 150 horsepower two-stroke, very light machine, quite similar to a Seadoo Spark, where this is double the horsepower at 300 horsepower, 4-stroke, supercharged. They're both very playful. Obviously, the Seadoo's got way more power. You can cover a bigger area, meaning like your figure eights, your donuts, they take up more room than something small like this, where you might be able to do it more in a bay. You need more room, more acreage to be able to utilize a Seadoo. Seadoo does have throttle by wire, which means you can have the eco mode, the normal or touring mode, plus the sport mode. I only use it in sport mode because why else would you buy a 300 horsepower machine if you're not going to use all 300 horsepower? Fuel consumption is through the roof. I believe the tank is about 16 gallons, and in sport mode, you could burn 16 gallons within 1 hour quite easily. So that's something to keep in mind, especially if you let your buddy ride the machine and he doesn't realize how much fuel it burns, and he's out there for 20 minutes and he burns a 30-year tank, and he barely got enough left to get back home. Just something to keep in mind. It's not fuel efficient whatsoever. It does require 91 octane fuel. It has the Seadoo brake and the IBR, which is the lever up there. So basically you squeeze that, it's your brake, keep squeezing it, and squeeze the throttle at the same time on this side, and that'll put it in reverse. Having rode jet skis for years and years, 10, 12 years, without having brakes, I thought I would never need it and find no benefit, but I absolutely love the brake. You can come to no wake zones much quicker and then decelerate or apply the brake to slow down. That's one big benefit. It's kind of a nice safety thing, even though you really shouldn't have to rely on that. But I do really like the brake. I would definitely recommend getting a machine with that. In my opinion, the big benefit Seadoo has over the competition, especially this old Kawasaki, and I've owned other machines. I owned a Seadoo GTX before and recently sold that. But one of the big benefits with Seadoo is the ergonomics, or the ergo lock as they call it, which is these extra pads for your palm on the handlebar. It's this pad right here, so you can lock your knee into the machine as just a big muscle. The seat has this little bezel down here to kind of hold you in place. Same thing with the passenger seat, the handlebars, and even inside the footwells, it's got a little angled orange piece in there you can use your thighs to hold you in place. Just really well done. I think that's the biggest thing Seadoo has going over it compared to Yamaha and Kawasaki is the ergonomics. Servicing the machine, well, I'll start by saying it's hard to find a dealer for any PWC that has a good service department. These dealers are used to working on motorcycles, ATVs, snowmobiles, possibly depending on your area. It's very rare they're on the water. A lot of them don't even have a tank where they could put this machine in to water test. So if you're only having a problem, say, accelerating, they got no way to test it. So it's very hard to find a dealer. With that said, this machine is somewhat serviceable here. The rear seat pops off. So there's some latches. There's one on this side and there's one on the other side. Let's see if I can get them both. Probably gonna have to set this phone down for a second here. Pop this seat off. And then the main seat comes off with a single latch. Pop that guy off. And now you got partial engine access. You got oil fill. You got the dipstick to check the oil. You got the coolant there. And then this other compartment, this plate, this whole section will come off if you remove 13 screws. So it's pretty accessible, and 13 screws is kind of a lot to get at it, but it's better than some other machines. So some of the big takeaways here: it's a very stable machine. It does ride high. These footwells are incredibly deep in there. Engine's great, ergos are great. Closed loop cooling, that's something I don't believe any other manufacturers have. And then the whole accessory line, it's just been between the coolers and the pylon, that's pretty neat. The hull is made of this CM Tech is what it's called, and it's a polyester and fiberglass resin with an acrylic layer on top. And I'm sure the camera's not going to pick that up, but I'm kind of on the fence on it. As far as it's really lightweight, it saves a lot of weight. In 2017, when these machines were still fiberglass, I think they're around 100 pounds heavier than when I switched to that. It does hold up nice against sand and small rocks, but very large rocks can chip it. And it chips through basically that whole first layer, the whole first acrylic layer. And then it goes into that resin layer, which isn't very protective. So if you got any major chips, you got to kind of patch them up with Bondo and paint match them, which fiberglass, you didn't have to worry about that as much, but you did notice more scratches. So on the fence about that. Overall, I'd say it's a good machine. I would recommend it. I haven't had any issues, just did oil changes and spark plugs, and she's been good to me. So I hope you enjoyed the video.